All right, so we're here and we're filming 3 Degrees of Weather. This is our pilot episode. This is a little project between me and two other meteorologists, and we're just here to report on the weather, a few updates that are happening currently, and we hopefully are going to be doing this semi-often. Who knows? This is just us testing it out, but hopefully you guys enjoy. I am joined here today by meteorologist Andres Sosa, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, gladly. I'm meteorologist Andres Sosa. I run the Weatherist page where I talk about weather updates and alerts. Hello.
Awesome. And meteorologist Luis Dieguez. Go ahead.
How you doing, everyone? As Emmanuel said, I'm meteorologist Dieguez. I run 2580 Weather. It is a Miami-based weather page that is committed to sharing dependable information all the time, important weather information as always, tropics, climate, you name it.
Awesome. And if you don't know, I'm meteorologist Emmanuel Rivera. You can find me on Instagram at Where the Skies Are Blue. And let's get straight into this. Okay, so we're going to start off by talking about this current hurricane season. I want to hear your thoughts. Let's start with Lewis. What do you think about this current hurricane season? Do you think how do you think it's starting? Around average as we expect, or is it slower, faster? What do you think?
I'd say it's average. It's right on the money. On average, the first named storm of the season doesn't develop until June 20th. And we had Andrea develop on the 24th. So even though we were a couple of days behind, it's close enough to where we can call it an average start to the year. We also had Barry a couple of days back. That has long dissipated. And for the most part, they've been weak, ragged systems, nothing too much to write home about. It's what you can expect in the month of June going into early July.
And meteorologist Andres Sosa, do you agree with Lewis here?
I do. I do. I think Lewis hit it right on the money. I think that this season is starting to heat up a little bit. We're starting to see, we saw Andrea not, almost a week ago exactly, and we saw Barry just a couple of days ago as of this recording. So it seems like the season's starting to kick up. It's supposed to be an active one, and it looks like an active one. So I'm curious what else it'll bring.
Awesome. I'm gonna stay on you, Andres, and I'm gonna ask you, what do you think is going to happen in the future? Do you think it's going to be an above average season going forward, or below average or near average? What do you think?
I think that all the ingredients are there. So, for you watching, if you don't know, the Colorado State University provides an annual update, a forecast, if you will, of what they expect for each hurricane season. And this year they predicted a above average hurricane season. So it's kind of like saying that while we have the ingredients for, actually, I don't know the number off the top of my head of how many storms in total they predicted. Um, that doesn't guarantee that we're going to see, I don't know, 25 storms. So it's kind of like saying we have the potential of walking outside and seeing 30 messy fans. But that doesn't mean that you're going to go outside and actually see 30 of them. Maybe you see five, maybe you see 10. It just means the ingredients are there for you to meet potentially 30.
I love the reference. And Lewis, I do have to ask you. So we do think, as Andres mentioned, that it may be above average, but there's no guarantee. But what do you think about the ingredients that are present? What do you think is present to really suggest that it is going to be an above average season?
Well, we know very well that the sea surface temperatures across the entire basin are going to warm up as we go further along the season. They're already running a little bit warmer than the norm, especially in the Gulf of Mexico. We're slowly getting there in the Atlantic, uh, and eventually we will have a moisture plume or a pulse of moisture known as the Batten-Julian oscillation. I'll touch more in detail about that later on, but it's basically a pulse of storminess that rotates the Earth every 30 to 60 days. It's not over the Atlantic at the moment, but eventually we expect that it will be over the basin, and we will have tropical waves that will feast on that.
Okay. So I do want to talk about something interesting here. we do know that we've had two name systems currently. Um, and one of them was Barry. So what do we think about Barry? Out of curiosity, Andres, thoughts?
Um, Well, my thoughts is that Barry caught me by surprise. It was one of those storms that like you blink and you miss it. And it's kind of what makes me love the weather, especially like hurricane season, because it can go from calm to bam. Like now you have a tropical storm on your coast and you gotta prepare for it. I can tell you, I know that I've told you guys before the viewers at home. I was setting up for my video like process, like my normal videos, and that is when I checked the National Hurricane Center and got informed that Barry had officially been named. It had only been named for like 10 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, okay. But yeah, overall it was a small storm. Like it lasted like briefly for like maybe 2 days max. It brought a lot of flooding, heavy rainfall to the northeast coast of Mexico. But it is about what I expect of a tropical system at this time of year.
Perfect. And I know I threw a curveball to you guys. I really, the script I gave you was talking about Andrea. So I do want to ask Lewis, what do you think about Andrea, our first name storm of the season?
Andrea had its opportunities to be named. Absolutely, it did. There were times where on satellite presentation, you can see the convection on the northern side of the storm and try to wrap around the southern flank. But I'll tell you what, by the time the Hurricane Center popped the trigger, it was just a naked swirl. The convection was all gone. Vertical wind shear, which is absolutely hostile for tropical cyclones, had already eaten it up. And it left a little bit of a debate in the weather world as to whether or not it should have been named at that moment. But it's done. Andrea's in the books. And now we just got to move on. And of course, as Andy referenced earlier, we also had Tropical Storm Barry, which is this quintessential of a June tropical cyclone, as one may ask, just ragged, nothing too much to write home about. A lot of rain associated with it, especially in Mexico, and that has since dissipated as well.
Yeah, and if I can chime in, Barry also had like the environment rigged against it because it was fighting shear from Texas, and you had Flossie, I believe is what the hurricane's called, that
That
was
is correct.
draining resources away from it. So Barry was doomed from the start. So I don't know if that's an indicator of the rest of the season, but it's interesting to see the Atlantic hurricanes just lose their spark the moment that they're born.
It's really interesting to see how different weather systems, whether it be in the Pacific, Atlantic, above the US or Mexico, how they interact with each other. And I want to stick with that topic here because I'm going to mention El Niño Southern Oscillation here. So we assume that it's going to be a neutral phase, or it is currently a neutral phase. How do you think that's going to affect this current hurricane season moving forward? Andres?
Um, so ENSO is the abbreviation. I'm not actually very familiar with this topic, so I will throw this at anyone else that wants to chime in. However, the only 2 cents that I can really provide is that as far as hurricane season, and so in neutral phase, it means that we're not going to see like it's kind of like a multiplier. Let's say if you're playing video games, a multiplier, like if you have like a score that says like I don't know 1,000 points, and so can multiply that by 2, by 3, by 10. When it's in La Nina phase, it'll really amplify the Atlantic hurricanes. Think of it times 10. But when it's in El Nino, it'll multiply it just by 1. So like that's when it's in those seasons, you won't see as many storms. But in neutral, it's kind of like mid. So you don't really see those extremes. So it's kind of, and that's kind of actually what we've been seeing now that I think about it a little further. We have some storms there, but at the same time, they're not as severe in strength. So it's that careful balance.
All right. And Lewis, what do you think?
Well, the neutral phase obviously is in full swing. What that means is that we don't get El Nino or La Nina conditions. Yet, Sandy mentioned it, it's somewhere in the middle. In the past, there have been neutral seasons that have gone on to become some of the most active seasons in hurricane history. On the contrary, there are others that have been just god awful. Just the expectations were just so high, and then the season just didn't pan out the way they wanted to. 2013 is a terrific example of that. And then the most iconic neutral seasons were obviously in the mid 2000s, 2004 and 2005. My takeaway is that in a neutral season, it'll become a situation where we're looking at the sea surface temperatures, we're looking at how the shearing behaves, because in an El Nino, there is more shearing over the Atlantic, and in a La Nina, there is less shearing. So, how will that tug of war play out? That's something that we're going to have to keep in mind as the season progresses.
Oh
I
wow.
like that
Okay.
expression, tug of war.
Thank you.
Okay, I have another question for you guys. So, whether it be Enso or sea surface temperatures or wind shear, what do you think is the biggest factor that will play into the intensity of this hurricane season? Let's start with Lewis.
In this day and age, it is going to be how warm the ocean is. The ocean content is it's warm as it's ever been. It's already running above average. I mentioned it not too long ago. It's already warmer in the Gulf. It is getting there in the Atlantic. When it comes to rapid intensification, that's all you're looking at. Tell you what, though, the shearing will play a role into that as well. Because if you think about it, wind shear, for those that don't know, wind shear is a change in speed and out in direction with altitude. So hurricanes are tall thunderstorms, and hurricanes move a certain direction. If you have wind shearing coming from the opposite direction, when those two weather factors collide, it starts to, you know, cut the head off of the hurricane, if you will, or the tropical storm. Dry air will play a role into that as well. Saharan dust, we will have lots of it coming out of Africa. So it's a little bit of everything, but I'm leaning towards the sea surface temperatures ultimately having the final say as to how strong these storms get.
Awesome. And Andy, do you concur or disagree?
Of course I agree. I would just have like an amendment to that answer, so like something additional. I think that yes, this has the potential, like every hurricane season, to be an intense hurricane season. It just takes one storm hitting the right area at the right point in time. But I think that what's going to define this season is the lack of resources, or rather, what resources are available to NOAA, the National Hurricane Center, and the National Weather Service. Because we are used to hurricane seasons, we're used to having recon planes, we have our satellites that are available, but when they rather lose that funding, that impacts everyone that is affected by hurricanes. So that's personally what I'm looking at this hurricane season as
Oh
the
yeah,
defining point.
Wow.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm. Well, go ahead, Emmanuel.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say, wow, that's a great topic. And I want to hear your thoughts on that as well, Lewis.
Uh, I'm so happy that Andy mentioned it. It is arguably probably the most important component aside from, what's going on in the atmosphere. If we don't have the adequate tools or the hardware to track these storms, we're going to go back to 1999. And I'll use a quote by my idol, John Morales, who is the hurricane specialist at NBC Channel 6 in Miami. He said that we will go back to 1999, except it's not going to be a party and lots of people may die because they won't get the warnings due to the lack of important information.
Yeah, that's a great point. Um, Sadly, that is the reality of today. But hopefully we can just keep an eye on this hurricane season and other weather events, and hopefully we can just see the best outcome
Sure.
as possible. It really matters that the people are safe and that the information that we can collect gets distributed properly, and the
Oh, yeah,
resources as well. Resources as well.
certainly. I'll add one more thing before we move on to to another topic in this episode. The folks at the Hurricane Center, all the Nats that work at the Weather Service, they take such pride in what they do. And even if there are shortages in the personnel, in the hardware, they will work as diligently as ever to keep us safe, even if it means a little bit of extra work, after hours, etc.
Yeah. And one of our professors, so a little bit of our lore, we all went to the same university and we studied the same classes at the same time. So we have this one professor who has worked closely with basically every weather organization here in South Florida. And he knows and he loves to say how personal each and every single personnel working for the National Hurricane Center takes it when we have a loss of life from a storm. So, and that's why they take all the warnings so seriously. That's why they try to get the message out there. That's why they try to improve. It's not like a conspiracy theory. These are people whose job is to make sure that you stay alive. And it's difficult to see them be politicized and then all of a sudden lose funding for them to do their job and then get blamed for no, then get shit for it.
That's true. So I don't know how to properly move from this topic. I do agree with both of you, but I do also want to carry on.
Yeah, fair.
So just to continue, we're probably going to finish this off with this last topic. What are your guys' future, like 1 week future predictions moving forward? Is there anything interesting happening within the next week or 2 weeks that you want to mention or talk about? Whichever one.
I mean, I spent a lot of my time looking at long range outlooks and I spent 90 minutes a day looking at models. That's just how I am, especially model runs from the Euro. It's my favorite model. What I will say is that after this tropical system in the northeastern Gulf and potentially the rest of the southeast is long gone, it'll probably be a blank slate out in the tropics. I made a post earlier today regarding the tropical activity in July. This is about the time where we start to see signs of life east of the Antilles near Puerto Rico. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but it's just something to think about.
I would add, I'm interested in seeing what develops here in the from the system. The frontal remains here in Florida. If anything develops right now, it's 20%. Admittedly, the last time that I said a system has incredibly low chance, it actually ended up forming. So I'm not gonna say that it's not gonna form. But as for what comes next, who knows? That's why we're constantly watching the radar. Maybe it's five like hurricanes just form, or nothing. It could be a nothing burger. It really just depends on how the conditions today evolve into tomorrow, and then keep evolving into next week. But let's just keep an eye on it.
I do
Yeah.
love you mentioning that, Andy. For those who don't know, there is currently a area of concern. Nothing too crazy. I believe it's 30% chance within the next 5 days of
Oh, it went up.
forming. I think it's
Yes.
at 30 currently.
Yes, so we are at 30%. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is something to keep an eye on. Who knows? We might have the C version of Andrea or something bigger. Who knows? But I do want to thank you guys. I
Yeah,
think that's all.
30%.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions I have for you guys. I do want to thank you. If you want to plug your social media, Andy, go ahead.
Oh, you want me?
Yeah, go for
Okay.
it.
So again, hello. My name is Meteorologist Andres Sosa. I love to say that for every single video. Love to talk about the weather. I love to teach you a little bit about the weather, and test your knowledge on what you know. For example, like if you know what precipitation means, or do you know what temperature is? And yeah, you can follow me at Weatherist or the Weatherist on Instagram, or TikTok, or YouTube as well. I'm everywhere.
Awesome. Awesome. And Lewis, go ahead.
Hold on just a quick moment with the lighting. Sorry about that. Uh, Please, if you may, follow me at 2580 Weather on Instagram. I am posting constantly. two or three posts a day, sometimes a little bit more. But for the most part, I provide important weather information. I write lengthy captions, insightful captions at that. I make high quality graphics. I share my opinion on all things weather in South Florida and for the rest of the state for that matter. It is a great follow. We are a small page, but we are rapidly growing. So feel free to follow me at 2580 Weather.
Amazing. Thank you so much, you two.
And wait, what about you, senor?
I'm getting to that. Don't worry, I'm getting to that. So this has been meteorologist Emmanuel Rivera. That is my YouTube channel. You can also find me on TikTok and Instagram. Instagram is Where the Skies Are Blue, and TikTok is Where the Skies Are Blue too. Where the Skies Were Blue was taken on TikTok. Who knew? Anyways, I am meteorologist Emmanuel Rivera, and I thank both of you for joining us, and I thank everyone for watching. And hopefully, we'll see you guys again soon. This was 3 degrees of meteorology or weather, 3 degrees of weather. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, guys.
It was a pleasure, everyone.